Okay, now I'm on. I believe the height of ignorance is to talk knowledgeably about something that you actually know nothing about. And that's the realm of talkback hosts and politicians. And also popes. They seem to be experts in everything. But, we saw that there's a lot of false information pushing us in the wrong direction. In the Bible, Peter says in 2 Peter 3:5, "For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was being overflowed with water perished." But it says they were willingly ignorant of. I want to focus on that. What does it mean to be willingly ignorant? It's when you have the opportunity to know, but you neglect to improve the privilege. We're all church members here, I think. Ellen White says, if light and truth are within our reach, and we neglect to improve the privilege of hearing or seeing it, we virtually reject it. We are choosing darkness rather than light. Ignorance is no excuse for error and sin when there is every opportunity to know the will of God. That's around page 597 of Great Controversy. Willingly ignorant. I remember Kent Hovind. Has anyone heard of Kent Hovind? An independent Baptist apologist. He's great. I used to listen to everything he put out till he spoke about the Sabbath and Seventh-day Adventists, and he was deleted. But he talks about this verse, being willingly ignorant. He refers to it as being dumb on purpose. You cannot be ignorant if there's no way of knowing what the truth is. But if the truth's there, you have the advantage, as Ellen White says, the opportunity to hear and see it, and you reject it. You are choosing darkness rather than light. And as a church, we are in a serious condition because we have the opportunity. Some people have grown up all their lives with the opportunity, and there's salvation. Our diet is not salvation. But if we're rejecting being the best we can be for God in every aspect of our lives, we're choosing darkness rather than light. I don't want us to be dumb on purpose, but people are. This guy here, William Willett from Harvard, he said, epidemiologists have long known that the major determinants of our killer diseases are what? Dietary and lifestyle factors. This is in recent times. Ellen White had a vision in 1863. Counsels on Diets and Foods. The book Ministry of Healing. A myriad of books written by Seventh-day Adventists who understand the concept of cause and effect. We cannot claim to be ignorant, can we? Coop, who was the Surgeon General in the US up until 2009, he said, the greatest challenge in medicine today is to motivate people to assume more responsibility for a health-affirming lifestyle. Our young professor's gone again. I was going to ask him the question, who has to turn the tap off? Who? We do. It's our responsibility to turn off the tap. You can't expect the doctor or the registrar at the hospital or the specialist in whatever department they're working in to turn it off. They can't do it. We have to turn the tap off. But he says the greatest challenge in medicine today is to motivate people, because people would rather be willingly ignorant. Do you believe that? I'll show you a cartoon. This guy goes to a good doctor. He said, your lifestyle is destroying you. Start an exercise program, get plenty of rest, and learn how to handle stress. And look at the guy. I didn't know it was so easy. Is that all I've got to do? He said, you should change your eating habits and stop smoking and drinking. Mate, why has nobody told me this before? He gets up and he says, you're right, doc, thanks. But as he's walking out, he says, man, I've got to find another doctor. That's what people want to go to the doctor, the naturopath, and get the magic pill. They don't want to address the issue of taking care of themselves. Now, that's a cartoon. Have we got some sound happening? I'm about to play a video. This is a real-life a real-life incident of this happening. You may recognise the two people, or one of these people, or none of these people, but one of them was a president of the United States.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
You and I don't want to sound silly about this, but you look wonderful. You look better than I've ever seen you in my life.
You know, when you get to be our age, about all you got left is bright clothes and BS, and you got a corner on the BS market, so I had to do this.
Yeah, I do. But you and I have a similar health history. We both had some fairly invasive surgery, and I've been struggling with my weight. You have conquered your weight. What are you doing? How do you do it? Why can't I do it?
Well, I haven't really. I mean, I'm about 5 pounds overweight now because I've been working so hard and I haven't been out doing as much exercise as I need. But I gave up meat and dairy and virtually completely gave up fish. I just went on as close to a vegan diet as I could get and still traipse around the world over there.
Right. Wow. Well, see, I don't want to do that.
But look.
Bill Clinton's speechless. That's willingly ignorant. He can see it working for this gentleman, but I don't want to do that. And that's what Coop said. Everett Coop said that the people in the society, they don't want to change. That's what I pay the doctor for. That's what I pay my specialist for. That's what I pay the naturopath for. But we need to make the decision to change, to do what we can, and not be willingly ignorant or dumb on purpose. And remember, we talked in the last presentation about this book, Ministry of Healing. Robert Cohen took 500 statements from it, and he said that science has caught up with what was written in that book 500 times, right up to 2012. Now, I hope you're sitting down, because I'm going to share the most unpopular word in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In fact, in certain circles and leadership, you get judged by this word, where you stand on this. But we cannot claim to be ignorant. Ellen White said, how could she know that stuff? Well, we said it was inspiration. Under inspiration, this is what she said. Cheese should never be introduced into the stomach. Was she right 500 times? Why would she say something like that? I remember watching Dwight Nelson speaking to the students at Pioneer Memorial, and he said, you are all tertiary students, you're all educated. How is it that you can't work out a simple English word like never? Robert Cohen spoke at a Seventh-day Adventist function, and he said, you people must be the dumbest people on the earth because you do not know what the word never means. This word cheese is a divisive word in our church. But do you know this word cheese, this product, is responsible for an amazing anomaly in Seventh-day Adventist health? Do you know, as Seventh-day Adventists around the world, we have less cancer of every type than the rest of the people in the population? There's one cancer we actually have slightly more. Bowel cancer. Because so many in our church have replaced, they think there's something wrong with meat, they've replaced meat with cheese. But she didn't just say it once. She said cheese is still more objectionable. It is wholly unfit for food. Somebody a bit later on, this guy here, Neil Barnard, he created the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And Neil Barnard has now got 33,000 physicians signed up to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. He said, cheese is crack. Let's see whether they are correct, if there's any reason that science might catch up to those two statements. Because ignorance is rife. Ignorance is rife everywhere. We're willingly ignorant of the fact and we're missing the obvious. What was the diet that God gave us in the beginning, in the 29th verse of the Bible? but it was specific. It was fruits, seeds, nuts, and grains. I want you to think about a concept you maybe never thought about before. If you take any of those and put them in the soil, what happens? Every single thing that's listed has life in itself. It grows. And I want you to think about that. Think about a nut or a seed. That nut came from a tree that grew from a seed. That came from a tree that grew from a seed. Every nut and seed that you can hold in your hand today is an unbroken chain of life all the way back to creation, just as you are. Have you ever thought about that? That life that's in that seed, that's in that grain that causes it to grow, was put there by God at creation. It'd be all right to say, wow, or something right. Isn't that amazing, the concept to think about? Yeah, thank you. I heard a wow over here. So imagine those foods that God told us to eat. If we put them in the ground, they grow, they bring life, they've got life in themselves that go all the way back to creation. What happens if you put them in your body? Could it be the same? That they give life? But there's other foods. What do vegetables do? You put vegetables on the ground, what happens? Any gardeners here? Oh, I should run some gardening courses here. Teach you how to make a gobbler, something that eats everything and then turns it into amazing nutrients for the soil. Plants need humus. I remember during COVID, Kerry and I did some videos called God's Supermarket, teaching people how to do gardening. And I dug a hole to show you how to grow a pumpkin. You only need a small hole, fill it with really good stuff, and the rest of it can grow on concrete. It doesn't need to have lots of soil to grow pumpkins. And I said, I'm down there, she's got the camera, and I said, so you dig a hole like this, a cylindrical hole, and you fill it with hummus. I went, hang on, we'll just cut that. It's not hummus, so don't go out there and put beetroot hummus in your hole. It's got to be humus. But vegetables become an environment for plants to grow. It's called compost. Vegetables heal the soil, create a good growing environment. They seem to do the same thing in our bodies. Vegetables are healing plants. What happens if you put a dead animal on the ground? It rots, and then what happens? I used to work out doing logging and clearing land on farms and that. When we go into a paddock, we could see where a sheep died. We could see where a cow died. A cow, if it dies on a green paddock, you can see where it died years later because it's killed the soil. Nothing will grow there for years because it's toxic to the soil. I just want to think about that. So we can put food in our body that's got life. We can put food in our body that heals. We've got food in our body that causes death and decay. But there's something worse, friends. There's something worse. There's another food. It's called milk. Do you know what happens when you put milk on the ground? If you get a milk spillage, it's an environmental and an ecological disaster. It's ecotoxic. We've had 2 incidences. We had a milk truck rolled over in Christchurch. They evacuated houses. They brought in specialists to deal with the toxic environment. They sealed off the area. It was an environmental disaster. And we put it in our bodies. Maybe it's an environmental disaster, an ecotoxic thing in our bodies. And I'm going to show you one of those incidences. The one happened in Christchurch, there was one in California. But this is from the New Zealand government. This is the Bay of Plenty Regional Council from the New Zealand government talking about dairy farming, because in New Zealand, dairy's everything. I don't know if you know about that. Our entire economy is based on dairy farming. And they've got to get rid of the milk. And at the end, I'm going to give you a bonus why they get rid of some of the milk. And this is from the government. Discharging or dumping of milk into a waterway is not acceptable. Milk has an effect on watercourses 3 times more drastic than farm dairy shed effluent. Is that what 1,000 times more toxic than all the cow poo that they wash out. Can you believe that? 1,000 times more toxic. Any discharge of milk will deplete oxygen and kill river and stream life, trout, eels, insects, coral, and vegetation. This is New Zealand government. The preferred method for milk disposal is spray irrigation. And look, I've highlighted a bit. Milk can be sprayed onto pasture without causing pasture damage. Can you spray it without causing pasture damage? Apparently so, if it is diluted with water at a ratio of 1 litre of milk to 10 litres of water. Following irrigation, clean water should be flushed through the system to remove milk from grass leaves. Why, if it's harmless? They should be shifted to a new site after each discharge to minimise pasture damage. Hang on, it said you could do it with no pasture damage, but it's got to minimise pasture damage, which is a concern with this type of waste. This is milk getting sprayed on grass, diluted 10-to-1 with water. You can only do it once. You can't keep spraying it on the same place because you kill your ground. Could it have a similar effect in us? Well, this is an environmental disaster, an ecotoxic disaster that happened in California when a milk tanker rolled off the highway and flooded its contents into an almond orchard. They had to seal that off. I think the almonds were condemned, but they sealed the area off just like they did in Christchurch, and they dealt with it because they had to get specialists in to remove the toxic waste. It's milk. It's all it was milk. But I believe that this might have been a terrorist attack by the milk people on the almond growers. And I'll show you why I say that.
Milking a 600 kilogram Holstein, now that's easy. Milking a 1 gram almond, that's hard. Tiny little udders, tiny. This is a picture of my grandfather in World War II. When he got back from the war, he started this here nut milkery, and I'm 3rd generation nut milker now, and I love what I do. There's so much confusion in city folk these days. They're talking about nuts don't lactate, nuts don't have nipples. I'll show you a nut nipple. So this is a tandem nut milker. It milks 2 nuts at a time. It's comfortable for them. They want to be milked. You'll never see a happier nut than a freshly milked nut. And you can hear them a little bit. If you listen, you hear that? Hear that chirping? That's a happy nut. Back in the old days, we used to train gerbils to milk the nuts, but they would eat some of our herd, and it wasn't ideal. So these dual nut milkers have really changed the game. I'd say, well, I know exactly how many we got. We got 564 of these running 24/7. It's quite the operation. So it takes about 200 almonds to get a half gallon of almond milk. And see that there, that's what you get from a couple of nuts. Looks like milk to me. Nice and warm. All our almonds are fully organic, grass-fed. Oh, this will last them a good month, I'd say. All these ones you see here, these are females. Now the ones you see in the store, those are all males. They have no udder at all. And most people go their whole lives and see nothing but a male almond because, well, we don't let the females off the farm. You gotta be careful if you're gonna pick up and pet an almond. They'll jump right out at you, poke you in the eye. Whoa, whoa, easy girl. Hardest part for sure is learning the art of properly sexing the nuts. Because if you don't do that properly, it can really cut into your bottom dollar. Female. I don't even really know what I'm looking for when I do it. Male. I had to learn it from my father, and he learned it from his grandfather. You kind of just look at the back end of it, and I guess you feel the essence of the nut, and you can just kind of tell if it's a male or a female. When it boils down to it, it's really an art. It's something that takes time to do. You know, it's a hard job, but I'm living the dream, and nothing makes me happier than knowing that my hard work went into making this nut milk happen. I wouldn't do anything else.
The dairy industry is really upset about all these so-called milks, these plant-based milks. New Zealand's biggest company is called Fonterra. Have you heard of Fonterra? Yeah, even over here, it's our BHP. Fonterra have started making oat milk. They know the writing's on the wall. But they try to stop people calling it milk. Okay, so what about milk? What about milk? Where does it come from? Where does milk come from? It comes from the fridge, doesn't it? And Mum gets it to the fridge from the supermarket. No. Most people don't understand that milk comes from one of these things. It comes from a cow. We have young people that don't even know that. They think it just comes from the fridge or somewhere else. So I want to give you 4 good reasons why we should have milk. Number 1, IGF-1. Who's heard of IGF-1? No one? It's insulin-like growth factor number 1. Now, we're going to use studies here from the National Institutes of Health in America. This is what they say. IGF-1 is known to promote cancer development by inhibiting apoptosis and stimulating cell proliferation. This is the sort of stuff that you read when you're reading about cancer. This is low-level academic language, but this is what it's. I won't go into what apoptosis is and cell proliferation, but we understand that cancer's rapidly dividing cells going through mitosis. But it says it promotes it. In fact, in a laboratory, if we want to make a cancer culture grow rapidly, do you know what our researchers do? They feed it IGF-1 because it's like throwing petrol on an already burning fire. Now, IGF-1 in and of itself is bad enough. In fact, I'll share another statement. Epidemiological studies have reported a positive association between circulating IGF-1 levels and various primary cancers such as breast, colorectal and prostate cancer. Number 1, 2 and 3 here in Australia. Number 1, 2 and 3 here in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Do you know when you take milk and you take away some of the liquid and you consolidate it into ice cream, the IGF-1 levels are 10 to 1 by volume. In cheese, it's 12 to 1 by volume. I've done way over 100 cancer consultations with people. Got a dairy farmer that's still alive today. 20 years later, he was given no time to live. Everybody asks me, once I do a consultation, I tell them what cancer is, how it comes about at the cellular level. I talk about how chemotherapy works by attacking cells. They're triggered by mitosis. I talk about a few stories, testimonials. I just go through, give them all the information, but I don't tell people what to do. I don't charge. I've never charged anybody for one. I just do it for free. But I just tell them all the information. At the end, everybody presses me. I'll give you one story. A businessman that I'd never met before until I went to his home. He asked me to come through some other people, through my sister, her daughter-in-law and others. And I went to visit this man. He had advanced liver cancer. So much so when I told him about the pericellular mucin sheath, he said, that's exactly right. When they put the needle in to do a biopsy, it was like breaking glass. We heard it. And so anyway, we got into this discussion, and at the end, he just pressed me. His wife was sitting there looking a bit unimpressed. His 2 daughters were there. And he said, you've got to tell me something I can do. And I said, you need to take this information, listen to what I've shared with you, listen to what the doctor shared with you, you make a decision. Based on that, it's up to you. I can't instruct you. He said, there's got to be something. I said, well, his name's Ollie. He'll never see this. I said, Ollie, I'll tell you one thing. If you're not prepared to give up cheese, take your family on a holiday. It's that cut and dried. So anyway, he's still with us. He's still with us today, to the surprise of the surgeons and the doctors. But IGF-1, when you put it in cheese with all the fat and all the other toxins and stuff in there, it's like just throwing petrol on an already burning fire. We were told it should never enter the human system. Number 2, casein. Who's heard of casein? Okay. Once again, we'll go to the National Institutes of Health, and this is a study. A milk protein casein as a proliferation promoting factor in prostate cancer cells. I'm looking specifically at prostate cancer, which is really on the increase. Some of us that are a bit older here, did you hear of prostate cancer a lot when you were young? Is it everywhere today? Yeah. It's just like kids with heart disease and kids with cancer. That's on a massive increase because of the amount of dairy in our diet and other factors as well. But they were looking at whether casein has any impact. This is the conclusions. I'm not going to give you the whole study. The milk protein casein promotes the proliferation of prostate cancer cells such as PC3 and LNCAP. That's what their findings were. If you want to read a book that will be one of the best things you've ever read in your life outside of this book, it's called The China Study. Who's heard of the China Study? Anybody? Oh, a lot of you. So you'll know about what happened there, where the book came, how it came about. You know the story? So T. Colin Campbell, Professor Emeritus at Cornell University, he was an epidemiologist, so he found that in the Philippines there was an exponentially high level of liver cancer among the population, particularly young people. Their liver cancer levels were way high, and he thought there's got to be a reason for that. He went to the Philippines, did some studies, and then he came back, and he believed there was a connection with protein. His colleagues said, "You're barking up the wrong tree, Colin." He thought he was, because in those days, protein was God. Not those days. Protein's still God today. You can't say anything against protein. It's God. I think it's the other guy. Anyway, he went back, did some research, and it was conclusive. His research gave a straight line graph, so he went back, and he went to China, and he studied 900,000 people, the biggest epidemiological study ever done. He went into the provinces of China, and the New York Times calls this the Grand Prix of epidemiology. He was convicted. He went back to the laboratory at Cornell, and he implemented his theory. He tested it, and he implemented his theory on laboratory rats. Every day in laboratories, the scientists create cancer in rats, rabbits, and monkeys. Creating a cancer in an animal is an easy thing to do. They simply inject aflatoxin on the liver, the tongue, the eye, the skin, wherever they want to create cancer. They get the cancer to grow, and then they test the drugs on it. There's nothing wow factor about that. That just happens every day. They put aflatoxin in a location. Within 7 days, the foci come, which are the precursors of cancer, and the animal develops cancer. So what T. Colin Campbell did, he looked at the other aspect. It's not only the aflatoxin, and that's the most carcinogenic substance on the planet, and I'd almost guarantee that if you've eaten today, you've had some. It's a mould that grows on not properly dried grains, and you can't, aflatoxin and mycotoxin, you cannot get away from it. You cannot get away from it. Anyway, the rats in his laboratory were given the Western diet, the same amount of sodium, the same amount of simple carbohydrate, sugar, the same amount of fat, the same amount of protein, the same amount of sodium as a Western person has. So all he did, he extracted the protein. So he gave them the junk food diet, but he took the protein out. Put the aflatoxin on. 7 days later, guess what happened? Nothing. They couldn't create cancer. They could not get their rats to develop cancer once they took the protein out. So then he thought, is it protein per se? So he gave the rats a high level of plant-based protein. Aflatoxin injected, dabbed, whatever they did, no foci, no cancer. So he reintroduced the protein that they'd been giving in the beginning, and within 7 days, cancers were created. And those cancers, that protein was casein from milk. Casein does not cause cancer, but we won't go into all the scientific reality behind it, but in simplistic terms, it creates the environment for the cancer to grow. You know, casein and IGF-1 had a purpose: to make a little calf into a big calf really quickly. Cows are one of the fastest growing infant creatures. They rapidly grow because of the growth hormone IGF-1 and the casein that is in the milk. Its purpose is to rapidly grow the cellular structure of the calf. It was never designed for us. As a friend of mine said, the first person that ever looked at a calf sucking on its mother's teat and thinking, oh, I can't wait till the calf's finished so I can get myself a bit of that. Who was that guy? So number 3, casomorphin. This is connected. Casomorphin is an opioid peptide. It's a protein fragment derived from the digestion of the milk protein casein. What's the purpose of it, friends? Do you know what casomorphin is for? It's to addict that little calf to its mother's teat, because I don't know that I'd want to keep doing that. And the grass looks a whole lot better, but anybody who hears a dairy farmer or a cow farmer will know that the cow has to kick the calf away because it gets a mild addiction to the milk. It's a natural process that the calf won't wander away. It's mildly addictive. But think about this. When you turn it into ice cream, there's 10 times the amount of casomorphin, and cheese is 12 times the amount. Cheese is massively addictive, and people don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear it in our church that cheese is dangerous. And I want to show another experiment. I love these experiments that weren't done in a scientific laboratory. This one was done on a cruise ship. So years ago, Kerry and myself and 2 of our friends, we went on a cruise ship, and God blessed, I won't go into that story, but the price got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper till it cost us $427 for 11 days to cruise around Fiji, Vanuatu and Norfolk Island and back to Auckland. God was looking after us. Everybody else, for exactly the same deal that we had, spent either $4,000 or $6,000. Your food is included. And I've got this here. This bouquet is 100% edible. It's all made from vegetables. And that was at the buffet. It took us 3 days to try everything raw on the buffet. But because I'm into food and I look at food, I said to Kerry, this is amazing. You could get swordfish, you could have anything in the buffet. And you could go to a 5-star restaurant at night, you booked in, and they bought you the most amazing plant-based food you've ever tried. But it's a tiny wee stack like this with some sauce around it. It's a mouthful, and you'd say, can you get me a big one of them? No, that's how it comes. But you can have as many as you like. Well, bring me 6. But the food was amazing. But I said to Kerry, there's no cheese in any of this food. There's no grated cheese at the buffet. There was no cheese sauces. There was no cheese anywhere. And I thought, maybe P&O, wanting to look after their people, trying to get them on a health trip. No. They're very wise. They understand these things. Because on our 3rd day, we said to this Filipino waiter at the restaurant that we got to know very well, I saw a line of people and I said, what's that queue for? And I made a terrible mistake. I should have put that picture in, Kerry. I said, what's that queue for? And he goes, that's for the pizza parlour. I said, what do you mean the pizza parlour? He said, there are people lining up to get their pizzas, put an order in. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, so why don't they just do them in the restaurant? He said, no, the people are paying for them. I said, what? I said, all our food's paid for. He said, yeah, everything on the ship is paid for except your cheese and your ice cream. And also there was a place that sold great big steaks and your alcohol. You had to pay for your alcohol. But the ice cream, there was no free ice cream. You had to go and buy your ice cream. And you know, he said to me, that queue at 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning is exactly the same. People have been at sea for 3 days. They've got a cheese addiction, and they don't care what they paid crazy money for these pizzas so they could inject the casomorphin because they were needing it. They were addicted. P&O knows that, and so they make money out of it. We're going to get you at sea. You're going to be, all the drug addicts are going to be going, they were going to the drug dealer, the Pizza Hut. And I thought, wow, what an amazing study. Anyway, casomorphin's pretty dangerous. It's a more potent opioid than, this is from Science Direct, it's a more potent opioid than morphine itself. And what I'm going to share with you is horrible. Because this is why you've got people like Kennedy and Trump talking about changing the diet with the amount of autism. It's responsible for the most of the typical behaviour and cognitive symptoms of autism. Do you know our kids are drinking more and eating, having more dairy products than ever in history? Young kids are living on pizza and junk food, and people are giving it to them. And we have huge bowls of grated cheese at our potluck lunches in many places I've been. This is Science Direct, says that a main cause of autism is that. In fact, they said that casomorphin ultimately causes brain damage. That's 3 reasons. 4th reason. That does not say I'm mad, by the way. Do you know what IMAD stands for? Oh, sorry, I'm walking away from the camera. Stands for it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Why do I say that? This was another, well, it wasn't really a study, it was something that came about by chance. I met a man, probably a billionaire, during COVID. He was travelling around the world in a super yacht, and he got stranded because of COVID in New Zealand. So what do you do when you get stranded? You build a big building, put a mansion on top of it, and put your toys in it. So when I first met him, this guy would never talk to Christians, but he spoke to me, a friend that I went with. I won't tell you that story, but I went along with a guy and couldn't believe he lived in this outfit, but he didn't. He was renting a caravan space down the bottom. And this guy, when he saw that I'd gone on a motorbike, asked me, he said, "Oh, you're on a bike?" And he said, "I've got a motorbike," and a few. And he told me, so we've been on motorbike rides, and I went down and I helped him with his $150,000 motorbike, and it was running too rich, and so we instantly connected. But I found out when I went into his shed, I thought it was full of furniture and stuff. It was a furniture warehouse. When I walked in, this is what I saw. This is the building he built while he was stranded through COVID. That plane on the right is a Russian Yak. It's got 6 world records. It's internationally famous. It's called Steadfast. The blue vehicle plane is a Beech 18. It was confiscated by the American government from some Colombian drug runners. A friend of his completely restored it, flew it over, and he's got that. The one at the back, the seaplane, was an African drug running plane. That shed was full of all these amazing toys. This guy had a problem. He had diabetes, very severe diabetes. He'd had it for 25 years. When I met him, he was 66. His partner was 33, but that's by the by. He was half his age. But anyway, he had all of these toys, but he had diabetes, and they were going to take his pilot's license off him. He flies everywhere. He's still flying. In fact, when the conflict erupted in Iran, over there in Iran just recently, the man Ronan, he was flying a plane from here to Britain. He'd stopped in Oman. He had to fix it, jerry-rig up the brakes on the vehicle, on the plane, flew to Dubai to fuel up. The aircraft engineer that I know in Blenheim was saying to him, "You've got to get out of there. They're going to close the airspace." This guy manages to get in the air, and he's just taking off just minutes before they closed the airspace, or he would have been trapped there. Anyway, he's got an amazing life, but he's still flying. How would that be? Because they were about to take his license off him. And I went in and talked to him, and I said, "You know, I help people with diabetes." He says, "Oh, there's nothing more I can do." So we ran him through a program. We ran a chip program above there. Kerry and I, with a small group of people, we ran a chip program in his sort of upstairs mansion. But I walked in one night, and you think about this. This is a Monday night. And he said, "Gordan, what else is there I could do?" And I said, "Well, you could probably not eat what you've got on the plate in front of you." And he said, "Why? What's wrong with this?" "It's cheese and crackers." So I gave him just a rundown without slides on what I've just talked to you about. I talked about IGF-1, casein, casomorphin. I've crewed with him on the super yacht since then, and his partner told me that after I left, he said, "That guy seems to know what he's talking about. I'm going to give it a go." He didn't eat the cheese and crackers. He rang me on Wednesday morning. From Monday night, he rang me on Wednesday morning and said, "This is amazing." He said, "We're onto something here." He said, "I'm below 10 in my glucose reading for the first time in 10 years. That's from Monday night, friends. He would eat cheese and crackers every night. What I've learned about rich people, I've met a few people like him, really, really wealthy. they're different than the rest of us. Unless you, I don't know, you could be a multi-millionaire, billionaire sitting here, but most of us, we fall into the poor class. We go to the doctor, go to the hospital. They give us treatments for diabetes that deal with the symptoms. They don't really work, and the government pays for it. Rich people do extreme things for their health. He had been to Europe and had stem cell injections to try and deal with his diabetes. That'd be, six-figure stuff. Be over 100 grand to get that done, but it didn't work. Rich people pay lots of money for stuff that doesn't work. We just pay a little bit of money for stuff that doesn't work. He said, these guys have told me there's nothing we can do. Friday morning, he sent me this text message. I actually hit a blood glucose level of 5.8 just now. Wow. Yeah. No, well, I accrued on his yacht with him, but yeah, he just said, but this is how rich people think. He said, right, we need to buy a building in Blenheim, we need to set up a diabetes clinic. I've got some guy that runs a big record company in Europe. He's got diabetes, this mate, and he's just, we're going to go to all these people, we're going to get it into every school in New Zealand. But then he had another harebrained scheme the next day. He's got his finger in a lot of pies all around the world. But that's how he thought. He just thought, man, this is the answer. It makes a difference. From Monday night to Friday morning, that's the first time he had a fasting blood glucose below 6 for 25 years. Friends, it makes a difference. And I'm going to give you a bonus. This is a bonus to take home. Maybe you'll find out why they spray milk on the pastures. Somatic cells. Who's heard of somatic cells? No dairy farmers here? We know somatic cells by another name. It's called pus cells. Pus cells. And the average somatic cell count, this is pus cell count in US milk per spoonful is 1,120,000. In a spoonful of milk, there's 1 million pus cells. The FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, allows 750 million pus cells in every litre of milk. In New Zealand, it's 400,000. You multiply that by 1 million, and you get 400 million cells, pus cells in every litre of milk. That comes from Fonterra. That's the limit. If it gets above that, you have to spray it on the grass and kill all the stuff in the creeks. So I don't know. Have I given you 4 good reasons why we should be eating milk, or drinking milk? Or maybe not. Let's pray. Father, thank you that you have given us Genesis 1:29. You've given us the counsels throughout Scripture through the writings of Moses. You've given us the expansion of the vision in 1863, that we might know these things. Forgive us for being willingly ignorant if we choose to be. But Lord, we know that willful ignorance, willful sin cannot be forgiven. You've raised us up as a people to be a shining light to the world. Help us to do that. And Lord, I just pray that those that are dealing with cheese addiction in this room will battle through the 3, 4, 5 days it will take to be free. Lord, thank you for what you've given us, and just bless us for the rest of the Sabbath. Gather us all safely together here tomorrow. Take us safely to our homes, we humbly ask in Christ Jesus' name. Amen. And over to Bridget.